Yo, you're watching the Screaming Fish here, people. Once again, I'm here for you guys with yet another video, and this time, as you can tell by the clearly very obvious title on the bottom of the screen, we are looking at Blade Runner 2049. Well, I'm looking at it, you're more looking at the review and listening to what I have to say about it, and yeah, that's usually how these work. And yeah, I know a lot of you are going to be looking at the title of this video and thinking, oh god, another late review. Once again, I'm a child, not an adult, who's still in school, who can't go see everything on time, so there you go. So, without further ado and further rambling, let's go and review Blade Runner, or why don't I go and review Blade Runner and you just watch me? Yeah, let's do that, Now, what you guys obviously know if you've been keeping up with my channel for a while is that I'm a huge fan of sci-fi. It's my favourite genre of film, and I love most of the films that I've seen in that genre. What you guys may not know is that one of my favourite sci-fi films of all time is Blade Runner, which is directed by Ridley Scott and stars Harrison Ford. It is one of my favourite films of all time, and it is one of the greatest science fiction movies I have ever seen. So yeah, I was unbelievably excited for Blade Runner 2049. When I first saw the teaser trailer for this movie, I literally crapped my pants. Finally, they were making a sequel to one of the greatest pieces of cinema ever created. After years of waiting, fans of the original have finally gotten the sequel they have been craving. But was it worth it? Here's what I think. Instead of doing what I usually do and just going through what I like to start the review, I'm just going to say this up front. Blade Runner 2049 is fantastic. This movie was incredible. This movie is pretty much everything I love about sci-fi with a few new elements injected into it, and I have to say this might just be my favourite movie of the year. Is it as good as the original? I think I need to see it again to properly make that decision, but what I can definitely say is that this is the most enthralling movie I've seen this year, and probably one of the most enthralling movies I've ever seen. I saw this movie 4 days ago now, and I have not been able to stop talking about it since. So yeah, let's start off with what I liked here, and there's quite a bit, so let's get to it. The first thing I want to talk about is the plot of this movie. I'm not going to get into any plot details at all in this review, as I think talking about any of the plot points in this movie would be a huge spoiler, so I'm more or less just going to talk about how it impacted me. Blade Runner 2049 is a movie that heavily relies on tension, and had this film not had the tension that it did, it would not have worked. But thankfully it did. From the moment this movie began, my eyes were locked on the screen. The movie is basically a very elongated mystery movie, and the mystery element of the film progressively builds as the film chugs along, and I gotta tell you, the mystery at hand in this movie, it confused me at times, but at the same time, I feel that it was meant to do that, which is good because it gets you thinking. It gets you wondering what's going to unfold, and that's exactly what this movie did to me. It's a series of twists and turns that raises questions, but because you're so hooked in the story, you want to know the answers to those questions. For a plot as complicated and as complex as this, I would say that 2 hours and 44 minutes was the perfect runtime. Some of you may hear this and think that's way too long for a feature film, but when you consider the film's script and how much time it takes to develop certain plot points and characters, then believe me, had this movie been any shorter than it was, the film would have been rushed and it would have felt short-lived. But then again, considering how long the film was already, if another 5 minutes or more had been added onto the film, then yeah, it would have definitely overstayed its welcome. One thing this movie did not do, which is something of a complaint that I've had with most movie sequels, is that it never got bogged down in world building. Yes, this is a sequel to a film that came out in 1982, and they would have definitely had to have come up with a way to reintroduce audiences to this universe. But a lot of the time we get sequels that go way too far with that element, and it gets to the point where the writers are essentially so focused on world building that they forget to include things like an engaging story, interesting characters. It basically takes up the majority of the film if done incorrectly. There is one scene at the opening of this movie. One very effective scene that is solely for the purpose of reintroducing audiences to this world and introducing new characters and a few new elements to the source material. The rest of the film is entirely dedicated to story and characters. To put it short, Blade Runner 2049 is its own film as well as being a sequel to the 1982 classic. It doesn't try to set anything up, it has a story to tell, and it does just that. Thank you! That said, you do get the sense that this world has moved on, and in some cases not for the better, as shown in some of the events that take place, the locations, and even quite a few of the characters. And speaking of the characters, both the new and returning characters are nothing short of fabulous. The film wisely spends a large amount of time developing Gosling's character and giving us a reason to care about him. This is one of the best performances I have ever seen from Ryan Gosling. A lot of the film revolves around Gosling trying to solve this mystery and meeting new and familiar faces along the way, But it wasn't just the mystery that kept me enthralled in the plot, it was also my fascination with Ryan Gosling's character that kept me interested in the way things would turn out for him by the end, as well as hoping to God that he would make it out alive by the end. His performance in this movie is very cold and grounded, and that is what adds that sense of relatability to his character. We get to see him deal with a lot of conflicting emotions, and he's clearly not sure what to do or how to feel about the information that he learns. Harrison Ford was also great here, which is unsurprising to me because it's Harrison Ford we're talking about here. Seeing him return to this role reminded me very fondly of the sensation I got when I first saw Sylvester Stallone playing Rocky again for the first time in Creed. He's a very traumatized character due to the events that took place in the past, and as you begin to learn why, it becomes more emotionally resonant and powerful. Ana de Armas, I'm probably gonna say that name wrong a million times, so apologies for doing that, was amazing in this movie. Her chemistry with Gosling was easily one of the most compelling parts of the movie for me. They do a lot of really interesting things with her character that I thought was really cool. I won't get into it too much because, again, I don't want to spoil anything for you guys, but what I will say is that what they do with her in this movie is a very unique and interesting way of developing her character. Sylvia Hoeks made for a very intimidating henchwoman. She was pretty psychotic in her performance, and I'm gonna be honest, she was very terrifying in some scenes, and I mean that in the best way. I thought Jared Leto was excellent as the villain. I do have to admire his dedication he puts into all his performances, and this one is no different. Whenever he was on screen, he was a very strange combination of being weird, creepy, and while he really doesn't do too much in the film, I just couldn't help but feel a sense of intimidation and fear whenever he was on screen, and even when he's off screen, his presence and influence can be felt within a lot of the film's more sinister moments. So as for the actual filmmaking of the movie, I'm going to say it up front, this is some of the best filmmaking I have ever seen. I know some of you may think I'm riding the hype train a little bit over here, but I honest to God actually believe that. Denis Villeneuve has proven time and time again that he is a fantastic filmmaker with films like Arrival, which by the way is also a brilliant film. When I think of the true masters of filmmaking, I think Spielberg, Scorsese, and of course Ridley Scott. But Denis Villeneuve is a new master, and I would say that he has more than proven that with this film. The film is beautifully shot. There are countless shots that are still burned into my brain. The cinematography is masterful. I'll just say it, this might just be the most beautiful film I have ever seen. It's virtually impossible for me to think of the one shot, my absolute favorite shot in the entire movie, because it's all so amazing. Looking at the visual effects in this movie is like looking at a painting by Salvador Dali. Imagine you're a fan of art, surreal artwork to be precise, and you see a painting that is just mind-blowing in every way, from the way it's painted to the surreal elements of it, and it just looks incredible. That is what looking at the visual effects for Blade Runner 2049 is like. All the effects had this surreal element to them that made them all the more interesting to look at. In some cases you could argue that if overused, CGI can be a really bad thing, but this film takes advantage of the uncanny value of CGI and it uses it to its advantage, and boy oh boy, I gotta tell ya, it worked. It worked so freaking well. But even then, the insane quality of these effects doesn't stop there. It's a terrific blend of not only CGI but practical effects as well. The practical models that are on display here are remarkable, but the coolest thing about both those elements is that they are both perfectly seamless together in this film. When you watch this film, I guarantee you that 99% of the time, you won't be able to distinguish practical effects from CGI effects in this film. Yeah, it's that good. The different vehicles and technology that's featured in this film looks fantastic. The vehicles look realistic both in the way they are rendered and their design, and a lot of the futuristic technology just took my breath away. The sets in this film are fabulous! The attention to detail is staggering. The different structures that you see look incredibly insane, but awesome at the same time. Seriously, I'm intrigued just thinking about how long it must have taken to build those sets. The sound design is very eerie, which does help to create a sense of wonder, and in a lot of cases it helps to elevate the suspense. The score is fantastic. Hans Zimmer has composed one of the greatest film scores of his career. It's a perfect mix of new music and a lot of stuff from the original score, and it sounds amazing. It is one of the most authentic and chilling scores I've ever heard in a film. Similar to the first movie, there is action in this one, but these sequences are sparse. But the sequences that are in this movie are fantastic. The choreography is superb. I love the fact that when a gun goes off, the sound of the shot just echoes for a bit like it would in real life, and it makes it sound incredibly authentic. There's some really entertaining and thrilling hand-to-hand combat sequences that are quite the spectacle in terms of how well they're done. There is a lot of conflict in this film, but it's not always people just punching each other, hence the amazing but sparse action. But there's also a peripheral of tense moments just in the conversations between characters. There's a lot of high stakes and tension that involves characters that you actually care about. Blade Runner 2049 is a mind-bending experience from start to finish. It's a film that succeeds at being its own film whilst also being a great sequel to the original and expanding on the existing source material in a very organic way, by taking what we know and the characters and building upon it. I absolutely loved this movie. It's one of the best cinematic experiences I've ever had, and with that said, I don't think it should be any surprise at all that Blade Runner 2049 gets a 10 out of 10. So guys, those are my thoughts on Blade Runner 2049. I do hope you enjoyed this video. I absolutely love the movie, and I really recommend you go check it out if you're a fan of sci-fi, or the original Blade Runner, or you like the people in it. And yeah, it's amazing, trust me. So anyway, without further ado, once again, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I will indeed see you guys in the next one. And yeah. So now it's time for me to go back downstairs and annoy the hell out of my family by talking about Blade Runner 2049 for the 1000th time today. So, yeah, I'm gonna go do that. See you around, guys.